If your gross margins are sitting at 40% or 50%, stop calling yourself a tech company. You're essentially a service agency with a fancy name, and the market is going to punish you for it. The problem is you can't grow your way out of bad unit economics. If your true gross margin is 40% because of hidden delivery costs, every new $1 million in revenue adds a massive operational drag. Hi, I'm Kishore Dasaka and I run a fractional CFO firm, which means I look at gross margins day in and day out. I recently advised a company doing about $3 million in ARR. The founder told me that they were ready to accelerate. He thought his margins were 80%. But when we actually looked at the direct costs, the server load, the onboarding team required for every new deal, his real margins were sitting at 35%. If he had accelerated, he wouldn't have scaled the business, he would have burnt his cash runway. I want you to watch this video so that you don't make that fatal miscalculation. We need to define exactly what belongs to COGS versus what belongs to OPEX. Everyone celebrates top line growth. You see the press releases, $5 million ARR, $5 million valuation. But in my world, top line is vanity. You can grow your business to $10 million in revenue tomorrow, but if your gross margins are low, that is not a business, that is a donation scheme. So here's the truth. A business with 80% margin and a slow growth is often healthier business than a rocket ship with 30% margins. So now we're going to put your business on the operating table. If you're feeling cash pressure despite growing revenue, it is usually a leak in your gross margin engine. To find the leak, we need to look at three specific vitals. If any one of these is off, you aren't a tech company, you are a business liability. The first one is true gross margin. Most of you are lying to yourselves about this number. If you look at your P&L and you see revenue minus hosting, that is not gross margin. In a tech company, a gross margin is revenue minus direct costs. And direct costs means every single dollar required to deliver the service. Think of cloud infrastructure, payment gateways, and more importantly, the human layer, the support, the implementation, and the onboarding. If you have a team of 10 people whose job is to fix the product for the customer or set up the product for the customer, they're not operating expenses, they are COGS. And if you don't strip these out, you're driving a car with a broken speedometer. You think you're going at 80, but actually you're going at 30. The second, the killer ratio, what we call as the CAC to LTV ratio. This is where I see companies die. You track CAC to LTV and you say, I spent $10,000 to acquire a customer. They pay me $30,000 on revenue over 3 years. Now that is a 3:1 ratio and you think that you're winning. No, you're wrong. You cannot pay your bills with revenue. You can only pay your bills with gross margins. Then the $30,000 customer that you think is paying your bills is only worth $15,000 to the business. Now let's look at the math. You spent $10,000 to get them, but you only made $15,000 in real profit. Now your ratio is 1.5 to 1. That is not a scalable company. That is a savings account with bad interest. You're taking huge risk for putting pennies on the dollar. So therefore, you need to stop looking at LTV and start looking at LTGP. Now the third aspect. Why are your margins burning? Why is your margin taking a hit? And why is that LTGP number so low? Well, it is not usually bad luck. It is always one of these three mechanics. The first failure point is your price is too low. You're pricing for adoption, not for profitability. Or you set your prices 3 years ago when the product was at an MVP stage. Now that your product is mature, your price hasn't moved at all. You're delivering a Ferrari at the price of a Maruti. If your gross margin is compressed, it's often because you simply aren't charging enough and you're subsidizing your customers. Failure point B, your COGS is too high. Now this is what I call the service trap. You call yourself a tech company, but you solve problems with humans and not a code. Every time a customer has an issue, a human answers the phone and solves the problem. Every time a customer onboards, a human does the data migration. Now you know humans are expensive, but servers are cheap. So if your COGS is high, it's because you failed to automate. You're running a service agency disguised as a platform. Failure point C, the product mix is wrong. And this is the silent killer. You have two products. Product A is pure software, high margin, hard to sell. And product B is a managed service or a heavy implementation tool. Low margin, but easy to sell. Your sales team is lazy. They follow the path of least resistance. They sell product B all day long because it closes fast. So your revenue line goes up, but your margin line goes down. You are scaling the wrong part of the business. That is the diagnosis. Either you're underpriced, you're overstaffed on delivery, or you're selling the wrong product. find out which one it is. Because until you fix that variable, growth is just going to dig you into a deeper hole. Okay, now that we've identified the leak, let's go fix it. I'm going to give you a specific sequence of operations for fixing these problems. You cannot jump into strategy if your math is broken. So the first step is to change the foundation. Before you change a single thing in your business, you need to stop looking at the accounting profit and start looking at economic reality. You need to calculate your gross margins properly. We already talked about this, but I need you to actually go do it. Revenue minus all direct costs. Strip out the AWS bill, strip out the payment gateway fee, and strip out the salaries of every single person in support, delivery, and implementation. If you don't do this, you are operating in the dark. Step number 2, the split. And this is where most founders fail. They look at the blended gross margin. They say, my company is doing a 60% gross margin. Looking at the gross margin at a company level doesn't reveal anything. You need to split that calculation product by product. And you need to isolate the P&L for your enterprise plan versus your basic plan. You need to isolate the P&L for your legacy product and your new AI tool. When you do this, you'll almost always find the truth. You'll have one product running the company at 85% margin that is subsidizing another product that is doing a 20% margin. And once you have that clarity, you have exactly 3 levers to pull. The first lever is what we call the price rise. This is the first lever that you pull because it requires zero operational change. It is pure math. Now, I know what you're thinking. Revenue is market driven. So if I raise the prices, I lose the deal. Yes, in many cases, that is true. Market does set the cap. You can't charge $10,000 for a product that everyone else sells for $50. However, if there is any room, even a 5% or a 10% room, you take it. Why? Because price increases flow directly to the bottom line. If you raise the prices by 10%, you don't increase your server costs. You don't increase your support costs. That is pure oxygen for your business that flows directly to your gross profit. If you're barely breaking even on a product, then you have nothing to lose. Raise the prices. If they leave, they were profitable anyway. But if they stay, you just fix your margin. Lever number 2, fix the process. Your COGS are too high. Why? It's usually very rare that your AWS is expensive. It is almost always a process failure. And I see this in tech companies all the time. Your margins are getting crushed by the human layer. Too many people. You're throwing too many bodies at problems instead of solving them with code. And the problem of the classic unskilled labor. You hire a cheap junior talent to handle support and implementation. But because they're unskilled, they take 5 hours to do a 1-hour job. Now that isn't cheap, that is actually very expensive. And also, there is no uniformity every time you onboard a customer. There is no standard operating procedure. There is no process, and you are reinventing the wheel every single day. The fix here isn't cut costs. The fix is to standardize and automate the processes that you already have in your business. You need to build a rigid process. And if a task happens more than once, then you write an SOP. If it happens more than 10 times, then you buy a tool. But if it happens more than 100 times, you build a code to automate it. You have to ruthlessly eliminate the need for human intervention in the delivery of your product. And that is how you lower your costs. The third lever is what we call the change the mix lever. This is the final lever. So let's say you've raised your prices as much as you can. Let's say you've optimized your team and your COGS are as low as they can go. And product A is still making only 30% margin, but product B is making an 80% margin. The solution here is very simple. Stop selling product A. You need to change the revenue mix. I want you to max out the demand for your high margin product. Direct all your marketing spending there and point all your sales reps there. Pay them double commissions for product B and 0 commissions for product A. Fill the bucket with the high margin revenue first. Max it out to fulfill every ounce of market demand. Only then, if you absolutely must, do you sell the lower margin product. It comes down to this sequence. Measure it, split it, price it, optimize it, and mix it. If you do that, you just don't get better margins. You get a business that actually generates cash. I want you to really listen to this because this is exactly how companies die. You might think that you'll get to this later. You might think that, hey, 40% margins are fine, we're growing. You don't have a margin problem. You have a survival problem. And one final warning. Do not outsource this to your accountant. Your accountant's job is to keep you out of jail. Your job is to keep the business alive. The gross margin is always a CEO level metric. It is the measure of your business model's quality. If you don't own this number, you don't own your business. Take the weekend, run the audit, and fix the engine.